Welcome back to the Project Podcast. I'm your host, Connor Lewis, and today I am joined by a very special guest, former NBA player, former Spanish League MVP, and UMass legend Lou Roe. Lou, how are you today?
Connor, I'm doing good, man. I'm up here in the Northeast. Wish I was down on the beach, but it's okay. This is where I am for right now.
Those days of the beach might be behind us for the rest of the year. It's getting a little chilly. I don't know about where you are, but it's been cold over here. I've had to wear
Yeah,
pants recently. I don't like
yeah,
that.
yeah. I'm in Massachusetts right now, and the weather is beginning to change.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful time of the year. In the fall when the leaves are starting to turn brown and yellow and different colors. So you get to appreciate the four seasons.
Absolutely. That's what I like about New England, honestly. That's the only reason I think I've stuck around, because I do like that. I like to see the winter and I like to see the fall and all those things change.
Absolutely.
But we've been trying to get this going for a little bit.
Yeah.
We met at a restaurant in New Hampshire, just totally coincidental. My mom was talking your ear off. And that's what I love about her. She will talk to literally anybody. And by total chance, I meet a former NBA player in a restaurant in the middle of nowhere, New Hampshire. And now we're doing this. I want to reiterate, I really appreciate you taking the time and doing this with me.
No problem, man. And by the way, is everybody in
Yeah.
the family 6'9"? I think your dad was the shortest person.
Yeah, honestly, I think first of all, well, people are telling me that I've grown since
Right.
since last school year ended. So it's very possible that I'm like 6'8" at this point.
Yeah.
That's what people are telling me. But yeah, I think everyone's above 6 feet except my mom. So
Wow.
it's
You got a big family, man. I was impressed.
I'm glad that we stuck in your memory like that. But I wanna start talking about your career a little bit. I want to talk about you. We've talked about me to start with. I want to talk about your career. So you come from New Jersey, and then you decide to play basketball at UMass.
Mhm.
What's the story there? There's got to be a good story there. I can't imagine. I don't know why you'd ever leave New Jersey, right?
Well, it's funny. Coming out of high school, I was a top 30 high school player coming out of high school back in 91. And, I grew up in Atlantic City. And, to even have an opportunity to even to leave there to explore the world a little bit was, something that I always dreamed of, Um, Growing up in Atlantic City was really tough. We didn't have much there for young people to grow in those days. And there was a couple guys that came out of Atlantic City playing basketball, but my story started back in my junior high school years when I played for a guy named Bernard Reynolds at Central Junior High School in Atlantic City. Prior to that, I was in love with football. Um, the Miami Dolphins in particular was my favorite
Mm.
team with Dan Marino,
Yeah, the
um,
man.
Mark Clayton, and Duper, and all of those guys. And you might be too young to remember them,
No,
but
no, I know. It's a shame he didn't get a Super Bowl. It's a real shame.
right, yes, he was a great quarterback. And football was my first love. I played for the Atlantic City Dolphins. A great program that exists today. A great community football team with great coaches who put their time and effort into to help young kids in Atlantic City, and I was able to play for them. But that's how I got my toughness in basketball. I started with football, and it just made me tough. I love to hit. I love to get. I play wide out. I love to catch the ball, and I would always hit first. So I'm gonna tell you
It's a
the
different
story.
time.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
at Central Junior High School, back in those days, we used to have school interests on the bulletin boards in the hallways. They always post things there, school activities and sports. I was just kind of in the hallway one day, just viewing it. Coach came by, Bernard Reynolds came by, and he said, "Man, you're tall." I never met him prior to that. I've always seen him around. Big burly, light skinned guy with a big mustache. Strong. And he says to me, "Man, you're super tall, man. You play basketball?" And I said, "No, I don't." He said, "You do you want to try it?" And I said, "I don't know if I want to try basketball. Football is my first love. I had no interest in playing organized basketball. I played it messing around with my friends, but I wasn't interested in it. Football was my thing. So one day he just says, "Why don't you just come out and try it?" And if you don't like it, you can quit. Whatever. He was like, "In fact, we have a game tonight, and we would like you to come by and help us out." And I said, "I don't know, man. I'm supposed to be home. My mom is expecting me. Blah 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 blah." So eventually, he convinced me to come out, and they had a game. I went out there, had no idea what I was doing when he stuck me in the game. But I do know.
Wait, you went in the game. I'm sorry, you went in the game that day?
Yes, I went in the game that day. I mean, I noticed I was one of the tallest guys out there, but I was not clearly one of the most skilled. But I did rebound the ball really well, and this is before I even knew what rebounds were. So it's funny. We wound up winning the game at in the last seconds, and everybody. I remembered all the kids were jumping around. They was happy that I was there. And they were all like, "Man, you were great. You grabbed 20 rebounds." I thought I was quite awful myself. And they said, "You grabbed 20 rebounds," and I'm like, "What are rebounds?" I didn't even know what rebounds were. So to even have 20 rebounds in one game was pretty mind blowing in those days. So that sparked my interest in basketball, and the coach kind of convinced me to keep playing. There was another guy. You might want to look him up later. His name was Willie Glass, and he played at St. John's with Chris Mullin.
Okay.
Chris Mullin and a couple of other guys that were really back in those days. St. John's was in the Big East. Big East was a powerhouse, and Bernard said, "Why don't you watch this guy? He's from Atlantic City. I coached him, and he said, "Why don't you watch him on TV?" I watched it on TV, and they played at home. And I remember him running on the fast break, and somebody threw the ball up to him, and he dunked it, and the whole arena 30,000 people went crazy. I was like, "What is this?" It was the first time I ever seen something like that. They're screaming his name, Willie Glass, Willie Glass. I think Dick Vitale might have did the game or something like that. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of excitement going on here, But I had no clue in those days that you can even benefit from playing basketball, or even get a scholarship to go to school. So that really sparked my interest, and I really followed Willie for a couple of days. So a couple of years, and he was one of the main players that really inspired me to play basketball.
That is, well, first of all, I know the Big East was a powerhouse. My home city, Providence.
Yes.
Back in the 80s, we were legit.
Providence was tough too. Yes.
Yeah. We had some guys. We had Billy Donovan. He just got his jersey retired a couple months ago, actually.
Oh, wow.
At a PC game. So yeah, all the guys from those teams, from those late 80s PC teams, the ones who went to the Final Four, they were all there. Got to meet some of those guys. They're really, really awesome people.
Yeah.
But I gotta be honest, I can't believe that listen, I know, totally different time. You get stuck in the game before you even really knew anything about basketball that day. That day you met the coach. I can't imagine that happening today. With the way that high school basketball and all those things are so organized, and I just feel like it's totally different. And I'm curious to know, I didn't intend to ask this question, but do you think that how far do you think you would have gone in football if you really stuck with it and you were just like, I'm not good. I'm no good with basketball?
Honestly, I started getting interest from state schools like Rutgers. I remember they was back in those days, we didn't have social media and electronics and stuff. So they would use mail to contact all the players. And I was getting actually letters, for football from Rutgers, I mean, just think about it. I was 6'6", 6'5", wide out, long guy that was tough, catch balls. They were quick, So yeah, I was young playing it, but they probably saw the potential, I think why I stopped playing football is because Atlantic City, I don't know if you know the demographics, but it's right on the coast, and it gets really cold in the wintertime. So I guess I got tired of getting tackled in puddles of water and then sitting on the sideline waiting to come back in. So I said, you know what, I think I'm going to stick with basketball. At least you're a little bit warmer.
You should have just been like Travis Hunter and just played defensive back and wide receiver. It was,
Well, Travis played in the South, so it was a little bit warmer down there.
That's a good point. Yeah. I hope he does well. I'm excited to see what Travis Hunter does. That's an aside. Anyway, again, what made you choose UMass though? I'm really curious to know, like, how does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, let's start the story off like this. Like, in high school, I was recruited by I can't even tell you the number of schools that I was recruited by. Being a
Really?
top 30 player,
Yeah.
I was probably recruited by every school in the Northeast and the Southeast. Really, um, that I could remember. And you know, back in those days, you would see coaches around, and then they would have, maybe friends or family members who also lived in the area. And when I was younger, um, as I become, Lou Roe, and I start to play basketball and dominate a little bit around Atlantic City and South Jersey, I wanted to take my talents elsewhere to kind of test it a little bit, So Philadelphia was one of the stomping grounds that I went to. As you know, they have the Big Five there. They have, some big schools: Villanova, Temple, St. Joe's, all of those schools, Drexel. They have a lot of schools there. So naturally, you're going to have a lot of competition there. I started to play in McGonigal Hall in high school as a summer league right there at Temple. I don't know if they still run it there at Temple, but on McGonigal Hall was the name of the arena. And, you will have all the top college players, you will have all the pros and all the overseas guys playing there, And then, in those days, you make a lot of connections. You see a lot of people. The AAU coaches are making, connections with the coaches. So back in those days, a guy named by James Bruiser Flint, who's on the staff with Calipari now in Arkansas.
Mhm.
These are my ex-coaches. And James Bruiser Flint, I knew his dad, and I also knew another guy named by John Harnett, who was also out of Philadelphia, who was instrumental in developing Eddie Jones and Aaron McKee and Iverson, myself, Theo Ratliff. He was the main guy down there that, allowed us to get into the gym to develop our games. So it was just, it was a couple of schools that were interested in, going down to the final stretch there. I mean, UMass was one of them, but they had relationships with people that I was connected to in Philadelphia.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how that all played out. But that wasn't the reason. The main reason why I chose UMass was because they had a young staff. You had a young John Calipari, who was probably 35 at the time. You had Billy Bano, who coached in the NBA for a number of years. He's worked for Adidas or Nike or something like that. He's doing some stuff over in Africa. And then you had James Bruiser Flint. Um, James Bruiser Flint and Billy Bano was in their 20s. These guys were kind of very energetic. They had visions of, developing people and really bringing the program to another level. I visited campus. I knew what they were all about. Back in those days, they only had Julius Irvin, who we all
Yeah.
know as Dr. J,
Yeah.
who was their main player. They've never been to the tournament before, the NCAA tournament. They've never won the conference before. They never did any of that. And I was just thinking, I'm like, wow, should I go to Syracuse where they have, all of these guys, Derek Coleman and, Sherm Douglas and all of these guys who've done things, they have millions of All-Americans come out every year, and they've done so much. They won the Big East. They did this, they did that. They've been to the Final Four. You had Florida State. All these teams have done things. And I looked at UMass. I said, wow, they have a young staff, and they weren't bad. I watched a
Yeah.
couple of games. They was just barely losing to Temple. And so they was competitive to me. So I thought if a young Lou Roe would come, their first All-American, maybe I
Mhm.
can go there and help them out. Fortunately for me, it worked out. I went there and we never looked back. We won a lot of games.
Yeah, because you become an Atlantic 10 Player of the Year. You do all these things at UMass. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be clear on this. Syracuse was a real option for you.
Yeah, I had Bano. Bainheim was his name. He was sitting on my couch. I remember. I'm gonna tell you a story.
Yeah,
So
please.
I had
This
a
is what I'm
couple.
here for. I'm here.
Yep,
Let's
I
do
had
it.
a couple of friends. So in Atlantic City, we had these regions in Atlantic City, these areas of the city, and I was living in a place called Chelsea Heights. It's called Busby Village. It's still there. And a couple of my friends who lived there with me, they were Syracuse fans. And I wasn't crazy about Syracuse as a fan. But once they started recruiting me, I was like, wow, I was pretty impressed. Um, and so they came to my house to visit me, and I told my friends, I said, "Yo, Syracuse, they coming by. They're gonna come, Boeheim, So they were all gathered outside my house, while Boeheim and his staff were sitting on my couch talking to my mom, and they was talking to her, and I was pretty impressed. I was gonna take a visit there, but I never got a chance to. So I walked outside and my friends was jumping around, so we going to the Cuse or what? We're going to the Cuse or what? And I looked at them, I'm like, nope, I don't think I am. They was like, what? Are you crazy? What do you mean? So I said, I haven't made my mind up yet, man. No. So they was pretty disappointed about that. They were big time. They had posters all on their walls. They were really big Syracuse fans. And they to have their best friend go to Syracuse, it probably would have been a dream come true for them. So yeah, Syracuse was one of them. Rest of soul, Bobby Knight was also in my house, sitting on the couch.
Oh, wow.
Trying to, from Indiana,
Yeah.
trying to recruit me and bring me in. I had Florida State. I had Lefty Giselle from James Madison University back in the days, who is a Hall of Famer now. So I had quite a few coaches who came through to see me. I don't remember them all. Obviously, it was a long time ago, but but those were marquee names. I think when Calipari and his staff came in, they 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 left a valid impression on my mom. My family really thought that there was a real option for me. What I did like about Calipari, um, what the other schools were talking, rather than what the other schools were talking about, he said to me, I know you're all American. I know you can score 30 points a game. But if you want to do all of that, then you go to Syracuse. But if you want to come
Mm.
here, be a champion, all right, get your degree, all right, and learn how to win and become a great player, then you come to UMass. So I like the fact that he didn't promise me anything, um, but was also going to allow me to have the space to grow and develop into the player that I should be.
That's well. First of all, you're throwing a lot of information at me. I'm trying to like take it all in because you just like name drop like Bobby Knight and John Calipari, who's you end up like being coached by one of the great coaches that we've had over the last like 30 years.
Yes, sir.
I'm my mind is like on the walls right now. Sorry. I'm trying not to like fanboy out because like basketball is my thing. Like whenever I can talk basketball in this, I'm all in. So I'm that's a great story. I just want to say that's incredible, and I'm thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, no
When you
problem.
get to UMass, talk me through like some of those lessons you learned while playing under Calipari and playing at a Division One school that you took to the NBA because and then you have a long professional career. We'll get to that, but what lessons did you learn at UMass?
Um, Consistency, um, being on time, being reliable, being tough.
Hmm.
I remember you could not play on that team. You could not get minutes if you didn't have a certain level of toughness. UMass was a team, was a bunch of blue collar workers. We didn't have a bunch of guys that had great skills until we started getting myself and Marcus Camby, guys were higher level players. But they had really blue collar workers, guys who really had a certain level of toughness, and you just couldn't play. I recognized that when I walked in there. So just imagine you're a senior, you're a junior, and you have an All American coming in. You're not letting him get on the court.
Hmm.
You're going to kick his ass every day and show him, like, if you want time on this team, you earn our respect. And that's the way it was. I remember it was a tough adjustment, taking a full load of classes, getting up 5:45 in the morning to do conditioning. which we ran 20 suicides in 20 minutes. I've never done that before. I'm like, 20 suicides in 20 minutes? Are you nuts? And that was just part of the workout. We did sprints, we did this, we did that, and then we had to go to class after that. I'm like, are they kidding me here? I'm tired. I want to get back in bed. So just doing that routinely every day built the level of consistency and toughness that helps you succeed later in life. And those are the things that I learned when I was there to just be on time, to show up every day with a level of concentration that will make you successful eventually in time.
And those things, they carried over. I mean, you have a long professional career that I want to talk about, because this is like, this is really exciting to talk about. And so you have a great college career. You end up getting drafted by Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you know you were going to Detroit? What was the energy like going into the draft that year?
So this let me make you aware. Like, I was supposed to be a lottery pick, and it didn't happen. UMass that season was the number one team in the country, and I was the main star along with Marcus Camby, and we had a guy named Mike Williams, and we have a couple of role players who really played well: Dana Dingle, Dante Bright, Derek Kellogg. We had a crew. We had a crew of guys, and then we had some young guys: Edgar Padilla, Carmelo Travieso, Rigoberto Nunez. Like, we just had players that could go to any other school and get minutes, and really play at a high level. So we eventually built this program over the years. From my freshman year, we won everything. We went to the tournament every year. We went deep in the tournament, the first time in history. We've won the Atlantic 10 regular season and the conference tournament 4 years in a row. So, that's never been done before. So to have a player come off, that kind of team, obviously is going to generate a lot of interest from the pro level teams. So they were speaking about, and it's funny, how they say, guys are undersized when you have a Draymond Green who's made 200 million playing for the Golden State Warriors, 6'6", 6'7", and that was my steal back then. People were saying, oh, he might be undersized, this, that, and that was kind of like, a thing that they would say back in those days. So eventually, in my case, the teams wanted to see me more. So what happened was, a lot of the top guys, they don't show up to, the postseason tournaments and stuff where the pro teams can come in and actually get a better look at them prior to the draft. I didn't play in some of those. I was advised by the agent that I had at the time, that I should not go. So just before the draft, that agent, I wind up firing him for various reasons. And I wind up going with another guy named Mitch Frankel, who has tons of NFL guys right now. And I wound up going with him, and I got drafted by Detroit. But the team had mentioned to him, the general manager mentioned to my agent and said to him, like, look, if Lou would have played in some of these postseason tournaments, we probably teams would have gotten a better look at him. And they was like, thank God he got rid of that agent, because he was he was a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Is that why you fired him? If you don't mind me asking, I don't mean to overstep, but is that part of it?
I fired him. He was a great guy, but he was one of those guys that was just starting out. He and I had built a relationship through friends, over the years. He went overseas to some of those tournaments that I played with the national team, and he was around a lot, and so eventually we became friends, and I decided to give him a chance because he was a friend. But that was the wrong choice that I should have done. Some things that happened, I don't want to speak about them, but ultimately I had to make the decision to release him and then go with other representation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get drafted to Detroit. And then from there, you're playing with like some high level talent. You're playing with Grant Hill. You're playing Joe Dumars. He's a little older. I think that's like second to last year when you get drafted there. What is that like? Like you're coming in and playing with like two like Hall of Fame level guys. What's the expectation they had for you, and what was the expectation you had for them?
Well, first of all, when the day of my draft, um, I didn't go to the draft. I'm from Atlantic City, and I remember we had a suite at the Trump Plaza. This is when Trump
Mm,
had his casinos there. You know,
yeah,
uh, when they loved Trump.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Maybe not. Let's not get into that on this
uh,
podcast, but we can save that for a different time.
okay. So we was in a suite there, and we watched the draft, and I kept falling and falling and falling. There was a couple teams that said they was going to take me at 11, and then 15, and then it didn't happen. So I wound up slipping to 30. But prior to you getting picked by a team, the general manager called you, and then Grant Hill called me. He said, "Listen, man, I know you're upset, but we happy that we got you, you slipped to 30, but we're happy that that we got you. And you don't really have to worry about that." He said, "Come in, play hard, it doesn't matter where you get drafted, you prove yourself, you'll play a long time in this league, And so I was really excited about that. They kind of boosted my self-esteem a little bit, changed my perception as to what happened in that moment. But so I talked to them. I remember I arrived, you go the next day after you get picked, and there's a press conference, So that year, Theo Ratliff, ironically, was the first pick of Detroit, which I think they had the 17th and the 18th pick. One of those picks they traded away for Portland, and I think Theo was the 18th pick, and they had the 30th pick, and then they had another pick in the second round, 50 something. So we were all at the press conference the next day. They handed my jersey with my name on it. Obviously, it wasn't the number that I wanted, but I chose 30 because at the moment it was 30 because of the pick that I was chosen, by them. But I wound up choosing 3 to play with during the season. And I just couldn't believe it, man. I was like, at the prime, it was so I'm like, and I'm seeing Grant Hill. He's on McDonald's commercials, and I'm standing next to guys like, hugging me, kind of thing. And I've been seeing. I used to watch Michael Jordan and the Bulls play against the Bad Boys with Joe Dumars, and now he's standing right next to me. So all of these guys, I idolize, watching on TV, and I'm actually, having the opportunity to play with them. It was, probably one of the best feelings I've ever had.
So that you're kind of doing what I was doing just now and fanboying out just a little bit over. I don't know what I would have done if I met Grant Hill. I don't know. I would ask him 100 questions.
I mean,
Honestly,
listen. I mean, that's a storied program. I mean, organization. They
yeah.
have a lot of history, and I would imagine they chose me because they thought I was tough. They thought, I came with the same kind of play. I know I played really tough. I was considered one of the toughest players in America. So, I'm like, I got to live up to that standard. The Bad Boys. They were, they was rocking and rolling in the late '80s and the early '90s.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
They make a couple finals. They win 2. They were legit at that time, and they had Grant Hill, and I don't know what went down there with Grant Hill and all the injury stuff, but that's a totally different conversation.
And
But
he was, I think Grant Hill was like one of the top players in the country at that time. My rookie year, but personally, I think him and Allen Houston were neck and neck that year. Allen Houston had a great year, and the next year he signed with the Knicks for, I don't know, $56 million. That was unheard of back in those days.
yeah.
So I played with some really great players. I learned a lot. I was appreciative of the opportunity to be in that space, to be able to grow as a young player.
So you guys, you play that season, and then you guys go to the playoffs. You make the playoffs. You play Orlando in the first round, the Penny and Shaq Orlando team. I think that was the year before Shaq leaves to LA. And you're
So
getting minutes. You're getting minutes on that team though. You're playing.
yeah. So I think we played in the playoffs that year. We lost to Michael Jordan in them. We lost to
Was that
Chicago.
year?
Yeah, we lost to Chicago. I
Oh,
remember I was pissed off, you know. I'm like, wow, you know. So, you know, Michael Jordan, the best player in the world, you know, but when you're a player, you know, in that moment, you're trying to kick his ass. You know what I
yeah.
mean? You're trying to kick his ass and, you know, and try to beat him because he's considered the best, you know. So we did have a good year, and we wound up playing our first round against the Bulls. You know, we had Rodman and Scottie Pippen, and they swept us. They really it was a 3-0 when we was out of there. You know, I was pissed off. You know,
Did you have any belief you guys were going to win? Like now that it's all said and done, did you guys really think that you had it? I mean, it's Mike. We're talking about Michael Jordan here. We can
listen,
we can be
man.
honest here.
I actually saw him up close, you know, and I actually made him shoot an air ball a couple of times, you know, with that
Oh,
fadeaway. I had his stuff down. But listen, he gets away with a lot of stuff, man. Now he's an
oh.
unbelievable player. He's really hard to guard and stay in front of, you know, because he doesn't wait. He's very quick and he's very explosive, you know, and he gets all the calls, you know. So, you know, I actually got this really see I mean, he had 50 in probably two of those games and 40 in one of the games. And we all got
Yeah.
a piece of that. Grant Hill, nobody could stop him. Grant Hill, Allen Houston, Joe Dumars, we all got a piece of it, you know. So it was one of those players, those generational players that, you know, comes along every once in a while, you know.
I guess we might as well talk about this now. Is he the GOAT in your eyes, or are
Absolutely.
you okay?
Absolutely. Michael Jordan was one of those guys, like, I mean, granted, I used to be a big fan of him in Chicago Bulls when he was the young Michael Jordan, like, you know,
Hmm.
where they didn't win championships, you know. But they, you know, they were really good. They was on the cuffs of being a great team. And I saw him night in and night out compete on a superior level, you know. Um, I'll tell you a story. So
Yeah,
when I was
please.
at UMass, um, I had a friend who offered me to stay in Burbank, California, and the draft was happening. You know, it was prior to the draft, so I went out there to be able to work out at LA. Back in those days, they had Magic Johnson and all those guys playing at UCLA. So I used to come over there and play hoops. So where I was staying at in Burbank, one of my friends told me, "Hey, look, Michael Jordan's here. He's doing this movie called what's it called, Space Jam,
Yeah.
and it's they built him a dome right down the street, you know, where he can work out and all that kind of stuff while he films." He said, "But all the college players and the pro guys are going over there. Would you like to go?" I was like, "No question," you know. So, you know, I went down there, you know, and it was Reggie Miller, Chris Mullin, Chris Webber, you know, Juwan Howard, all the NBA guys.
Charles Barkley,
All,
was he there? Because I know he's in the movie. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't remember seeing Charles Barkley, but he may have been there, you know, other
Yeah.
days because I only went a couple of days. And I remember, you know, uh, we was playing pickup and then we took a break and Mike was sitting on the ground and I walked by him and I palmed his head. I said, you know, he said, "Great job, Lou," you know. So yeah, I was like blown away. You know, I haven't even gotten to the NBA yet, and this guy knows my name. You know, I'm like, wow. I'm calling my friends at home. I'm like, yo, I'm out here playing with Michael Jordan, and I walked by him. He said, "Yo, what's up, Lou?" You know, so that's when I knew that I was getting the visibility, and I was starting to get the notoriety of playing the game of basketball. People started to know who I am. Even at the pro level, because when you're on the pro level, you're a fan of the game of basketball. You love basketball, so you do watch college basketball. So you create, oh, I like this guy or I like that guy. So it was a lot of guys who were Lou Roe fans on the pro level. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know, like, if I'd even believe it. Like, if I were in your shoes, I don't even know, like, how I would react.
It
But you
was an
mentioned that. Yeah,
unbelievable
go ahead.
feeling.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so you mentioned the UCLA runs with Magic, and I've heard about these runs, and I don't know when like when who were at these UCLA runs? Like this was separate from the Space Jam runs, right? Was this a different
Yes.
thing?
So this UCLA was like, like I was in Philly. They had open runs with guys, it was a place where everyone understood how to play basketball. You don't want to go to YMCA where guys don't know how to play and you eventually get hurt or something because they just don't know how to play. So this was kind of like sanctioned a little bit, and a little bit more structured where, pro guys and high level European guys and college players that can come and play and compete, and still shape, and keep and stay in shape, throughout the summertime, you know. So those runs were always great. I remember one time, I don't know if you remember Eddie Jones.
Yeah, of
Eddie
course.
Jones,
Yeah.
Eddie Jones played with the Lakers. He played at Temple. He's a good friend of mine. We had tons of battles against UMass and Temple, um, and he was playing with the Lakers at the time. So I remember we were playing pickup, and we took a break, and it was people, guys would come in and out and all that kind of thing. And this one, the Houston Rockets were like rocking. They had Drexel and Elijah Akeem.
Mm.
And I remember Akeem came into the gym, and Eddie Jones looked at me. He was like, started laughing. He's like, "Who's gonna guard Akeem?" It was funny. He came in with his entourage. They all had their African garb on, and he took
Mm.
that stuff off, man. And he was in there killing people. Like, this guy is an unbelievable athlete. He's not super super tall. Like Wemby or one of those guys, but his skill
He's like
level.
7 feet though. Yeah.
Yeah, he's about 6'11",
Okay.
but he's got super long arms. He has soft hands, and the knowledge of the game for him is just, through the roof, skill level, the footwork. Um, I've seen so many guys, through that opportunity. It was just great to be in that space and learn from all of them, you know?
To be honest about Hakeem, growing up, obviously I was a tall guy. My dad was also a big man growing up. He was 6'5". He played like high level high school in Rhode Island, but those were the guys I was watching though. I was watching the tapes of Shaq and Hakeem and Kareem and those guys that had the footwork and had the dominance. And so those were the guys I was watching growing up. And
Right.
I'm young, like I'm pretty young, so I was still watching those guys. My dad raised me on those tapes. He wasn't raising me on LeBron and Steph. That
Yeah.
was the difference. And I think that may have hurt me in the long run because I don't know if my dad thought I was going to be 6'10", because obviously I don't 6'7" and 6'10". There's a difference in basketball for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I was watching even like the most recent guy I think I was watching was probably like Pau Gasol, who was in the league when I was a kid. But and even still, like that's pretty different from watching the big guys of my generation, like Anthony Davis and Jokic. Those are totally different players. So it's interesting to see how those comparisons work. So after Detroit, we texted a little bit before this. I'm curious to know. You mentioned that. So did you sign a 1-year contract with Detroit? How did that contract situation work out?
So this is how it works. The entire first round is usually guaranteed. All those players are guaranteed for I think it was 3 years in those days. Um, and anything after the first round, depending on the team, the needs and all of that, you would probably sign a unguaranteed contract. In my situation, I signed a 1-year deal and it was fully guaranteed because obviously I slipped and people, my agent was able to get me a guaranteed situation. So I signed a 1-year deal with them. Unfortunately, it didn't work out there. They was expecting um, the team to win. They were expecting, things to happen. And what happens is if you don't win, the low man on the totem pole usually gets changed or exchanged or cut or whatever, how you want to call it.
So then you end up in Golden State, and so what is that? How does that happen? How did the negotiations go with that? Were there other teams that were interested in you besides Golden State?
Um, uh, there was one other team, I think the Supersonics or something like that. I wound up going to Golden State Warriors because I thought I could play on that team. So what happened there was actually they did not sign me to a guaranteed situation, but they offered me to come to camp, veterans camps to make the team. So they had one spot open, and I wind up going out there with 20 guys. It was 20 guys battling for one spot, you know. So I wound up beating everybody out of the spot, and I eventually signed a deal with them to stay for the year. So I was playing with Joe Smith and Chris Mullen, Mark
Mark Price.
Price,
Yeah.
Bill,
Spreewell, right? He was there?
yes, Latrell Sprewell, Bimbo Coles, Felton Spencer. It was a great team. Yeah.
So what was the vibe going like in that locker room? Because you got some older guys with Mullen and Mark Price. You have Spreewell, who's kind of the young hot shot on the team. He was excellent during the '90s, especially. What was the vibe going in that locker room? You're walking into a totally different situation than Detroit, I'm sure.
Yeah, it definitely was a different situation. Detroit was, older guys who really understood how to win. They had a nice mixture of some veterans and older guys in Detroit. Detroit, we had super, super young guys. Latrell was probably in his second or third year, maybe fourth year, something like that. You had a Joe Smith, who was in the same draft with me. He was the number one pick. And then you had Bimbo Coles, who was aging a little bit. You had B.J. Armstrong, who actually played with Michael Jordan.
Mike, yeah.
Those guys were aging a little bit, so they didn't play as many minutes, as they usually did in the past. So it was really, we were really relying on the young guys to really make it happen. It was not a good year. Let's just say that. We won 28 games. I was actually miserable, to tell you the truth, because I'm used to winning, obviously from my college career and then a little bit with Detroit. So it was frustrating. I don't mind not playing a little bit, as much minutes if we're winning. Now if we're losing too and I'm not playing minutes, that becomes frustrating. And in fact, I wanted to get out, but they wouldn't let me out. The GM was telling me that the GM at the time was telling me that I was a player in the NBA. I just got to be patient, and wait for my turn, because these guys, they have big contracts, and if you're an owner, you don't want to see a $10 million guy sitting on the bench. He has to play. So I was kind of stuck in that situation where, I had a small contract, but I was one of the energetic players that wanted to be on the floor. But unfortunately, I got ousted because of business. That's the business and the ugly side of playing in the NBA.
So you go from playing the NBA, and then you spend the rest of your career playing overseas. You play in Spain, you play in Italy. Mm-hmm. How does that happen? What is the transition like going from you're playing in Golden State, you're playing Detroit, and then what was the team right after Golden State? Were you playing in Spain?
I went to where did I go? I went to Spain for a little bit. Yes, I played in Malaga, Spain, and then I came back and I played with Minnesota up until December, and then just before the breakoff date, because if they keep you around and you have an unguaranteed contract and you wind up staying past the deadline, then it automatically converts into a guarantee situation. So they cut me like maybe a day or two just before the deadline. So I wound up going to the CBA, and I played for what did I play that year? I don't even remember. The team out, I know we was in the city of Rockford. Rockford Lightning is who I played with. And right outside of Chicago in the CBA in those days. And ooh, what a difference, It's not like the G League of the day where those guys get substantial contracts. We were like, basically having bag lunches and, small per diems and stuff like that. It was a really tough situation. So I wound up telling my agent, that I just want to play. So whatever that was going to be, whether it was going to be in the NBA or overseas, I just want to play again,
So you talked to him. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, yeah.
So I wound up playing for, after Minnesota, I wound up playing for a team called Gijón in the north of Spain. And this is the year that I got MVP. So this is when I settled down and I finally realized that, this is probably going to be my my path, you know. And if I wanted to get back to the NBA, I probably should buckle down here and make a substantial impact here, and maybe that would happen. So I wound up playing for this team in the north. Uh, it's called the Asturias region of Spain. The Spanish people who's going to listen to this, they understand what I'm talking about. Um, and I loved it, actually. It was a beautiful situation. The team that I played for, we had great guys. We had a couple guys who spoke English. But it was a really tough transition for me because of the language. When you go overseas, you go there and you sign a contract with the team. So they provide the house for you, they provide the car. You just have to pay for food and telephone and gas. Um, and so you come to this new world and you have to adjust, with your personal life, going to the supermarket, putting gas in the car. It was all different because, they do it differently over there. So, but it was a great experience, a really great experience in those early days. I played with a couple of guys on the team who spoke really good English. Kid named Tomas Jufresa. And I played with another kid who actually went to school in the United States. His name was Javi Rodriguez, and he spoke perfect English. So they helped me make the transition a little bit better playing there. And that was the season I actually got MVP.
So what was that like, the MVP season? Because that was my next question: is how hard is it to win that award? And I want to know who was your biggest competition to get that award? Because I can't imagine that it's like a bad league. I can imagine it's pretty
No,
competitive.
no, no. Spanish. I think the Spanish league is the second best league in the world, by far. Second best league in the world. Now, let me just tell you, I was
Mm.
playing against Pau Gasol, who
Oh,
played with Barcelona. So
yeah.
uh, he and I used to have a lot of battles. He was there for a little bit until the Lakers was able to get him out of his contract, and then he started playing uh, in the NBA. I also played against Mark Gasol,
Mm.
who is his brother, who also
Yeah.
played in the NBA. I played with Louis Escula, who played for the San
Mm.
Antonio Spurs.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
played with him, and I played against him. I played with oh my man, Pablo Prigioni, who is the
Yeah.
assistant
Oh,
coach
wow.
of is it Denver Nuggets? He's the Denver
I
Nuggets.
know Paulo Prigioni. No kidding, really.
Yes.
That it's funny you mentioned Luis Scola. He's big with my generation. Like, my generation is like a big fan of like role players like that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
want you to continue, but I just want to let you know Luis Scola is like a big name to us. Like, the people watching are be like, oh shit, Luis Scola.
Yeah. Man, Lewis is a great guy. He's a tough player, 6'10", really tough. And he probably says the same thing about me. I'm actually in Massachusetts right now. And, I think one of his friends was getting into the Hall of Fame. And he was up here. Um, with him, and he was saying to one of the drivers, like, Lou Roe, Lou Roe, and Lewis was like, yes, man, Lou was a hard player to guard. He was saying some really good things, which I was surprised, because me and him had some really tough battles, on when we played against one another. But God, I was so happy when I played with him. He's such a great player, and it's really, he has a really high IQ as a basketball player, and it was easy to play with him, and we became really good friends. It was really nice to play with him. I also played with Pablo Prigioni on two different teams. I played with him in Alicante of Spain, which is in the south a little bit, and then I also played with him in Tau up in the north. So, and he makes the game. So I thought he was probably the best point guard uh, in Spain for sure. He's probably one of the best point guards I had saw in a long time. Probably could have played in the NBA a long time ago. A lot of those guys can play because their IQ and their skill level is so high, you know. And it's funny that you mentioned um, Paul Gasol earlier. A lot of those players, and I know you're going to probably speak on this a little bit later about how the NBA has evolved a little bit. We have big guys shooting threes and they pass the ball and all that. There was a guy, Sabonis, who was doing that for Portland years
Yeah.
ago.
Arvidas,
But
yeah, the man.
I saw a lot of those guys being overseas. I had saw the way they played like that overseas already. Big guys shooting threes. I saw that 20 something years ago, And for me, there's nothing new about that. It's just, they extended the 3-point line a little bit. Well, they haven't extended the 3-point line, but guys are shooting so far back. That's the only change that I really see about it, because I have been playing in national basketball. So I've got to see those kind of guys, who are 6'10" that can shoot the ball. Like Paul Gasol used to be this skinny. He
Yeah.
used to be a narrow kid, tall, skinny, put the ball on the floor. He was a guard over there, and that's why they don't do different drills for the big guys and the little guys over there. Everyone's doing the same drills, and they've always done that overseas. So that's why a lot of those tall guys have great skills. They're able to pass the ball, they shoot the ball, they shoot great free throws. They space the floor well. They know how to roll. And they have a very high IQ, basketball high IQ, you know. Um, so yeah, I mean, but unfortunately for us back in my day, because we used to play back to the basket, pushing and bumping and all that kind of stuff, we called those kind of players soft, you know,
Mhm.
who big guys who didn't want to get in the paint and push and bump, because they wanted to shoot threes or they want to put the ball on the floor, but they really impacted the game on a high level, they really
So
did.
how hard was it to adjust? Because you're playing a different game in Spain. I mean, that's pretty different. Even like Italy and stuff, you're playing
It
like
was
different.
really, it was really different. They don't allow you to get away with a lot of traveling like they did in the NBA. I tell you that.
Yeah.
I used to catch the ball and just run and transition when I was getting out in fast break, and they always called travel on me. And I used to be like, "Why are you calling travel? That's not a travel." So it was that kind of thing. I had to make the adjustment to say you have to keep that pivot foot down before that ball moves.
Mm.
So I made that adjustment through workouts and stuff, and I had to like learn that all over again. You know, the other thing is when you shoot a free throw and the ball's still in the rim, they can knock it off the rim. You know,
Right. I've seen that. Yeah.
and even if they're shooting a layup or 3-pointer, if it rolls on that rim and you got a guy who's 7 foot or who can jump, and
Like a
that ball
Wemby.
doesn't
Yeah.
go, if it doesn't go right in the basket, they can knock it off the rim and it's legal. So that wasn't the biggest adjustment. It actually benefited me because I was one of those leapers that can, knock the ball off the rim. So I actually enjoyed that benefit of it.
Well, you mentioned this earlier, and I guess I'll ask you this right now. How have you seen the NBA adjust to when you started, just basketball overall, but how have you seen it change and evolve since you were playing and you started in high school to how it is now? That's a pretty big gap, but I'm curious to know how you've seen it change personally.
I'd just say the toughness, the level of toughness that they allowed you to play with. I remember the Knicks playing, and this was when I was in high school, and eventually I went and played in the same league. We had Derek Harper who played for the Knicks, and
Hmm.
he used to literally just hold you by the waist and moved you anywhere. Like if he was defending you and you was the ball handler, it was really hard to get by people because they can actually hold you at the waist and kind of, and some of those guards are so strong and wings are so strong, they can dictate where they want to, play you. So you can't really do that nowadays. And it's different now. You touch somebody in the waist while they're dribbling the ball downhill, it's a foul. So the game is loosened up a little bit, where it's not as much contact, and the players have a lot more freedom in terms of developing, for themselves or their teammates.
So how do you think you would fare in today's NBA? Do you think you could make the adjustment if your 22-year-old self hopped into the modern NBA? How do you think you would adjust to that?
I think I would fare well because when I went overseas, I kind of started playing. My game evolved. That's why I was able to play for so long because my game started to evolve in a way where I was facing up, and I understood that if I, try to get by people, You know, if they touched me, it was a foul. I was so quick, you know, that I could face up and shoot, you know, the jump shot, or I was popping and, you know, shooting 3-pointers and stuff like that. So I thought, you know, I think I probably would have been a modern day Draymond Green or something like that, you know, with a little bit more skill.
Yeah.
Uh, so in this game today, I definitely would have been an all-star, you know, to be able to play in the NBA at today's game.
So before we let you go, and I appreciate your time, and I've taken up
Yeah.
so much of your time already, taking up almost an hour.
No
We're going.
problem.
The NBA season starts pretty soon. We're starting in about a month and a half. I don't
Yes.
know how close you're following the NBA, but is there any team you like this year for the finals? We just had Indiana versus Oklahoma. Nobody saw that finals coming.
Right.
Is there anyone you like for this coming season?
Um. Actually, man, to be honest with you, I just like the game of basketball. I really enjoy watching good basketball. You know, there's a couple teams out there. New York, obviously, is going to be really good too. They got a new coach with Mike Brown, who's been
Yeah.
a player before. He's, you know, coached under some really great coaches and been really successful himself, you know, as a coach. So I think he's going to bring a lot of excitement in New York. You know, they're going to they got their players coming back. Obviously, Oklahoma is going to do well. Um, but I think Houston may be well. Didn't they sign KD this year?
Yeah, they traded for Durant. Yeah, you're
Oh
absolutely right.
my! So he can come in and kind of play with those young guys. You know, he's, you know, KD is going to do his thing. You know, he's like an
Yeah.
anomaly. You know, he's shooting threes.
He's shooting up here. I shoot up there too. That's how I learned from him how to shoot my jumpers because I can't. No
Listen,
one can block that if you're my height.
it's hard. Like nobody can block it because he's 7 foot. You
Yeah,
know,
it's true.
so
You're
when
right.
he gets off the floor, that thing is way up there. You know, you're not going to contest that at all. You know, so you know they have just a really great core of players there, and they're going to be exciting to watch. So, so I'm just excited about watching great basketball, and I just look forward to the season, man. I really do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, I have one more question for you.
Yes, sir.
We got a lot of young athletes that watch this, from some that play basketball, some that play other sports. Is there any piece of advice you could share to those young people that maybe they're in high school or college that you've taken from your career?
Um, like I said, the word is consistency. Anything that you want to do in life, you know, it's about being consistent, and then taking steps towards that goal. You know, where, you know, having the knowledge to take steps towards that goal. You know, trusting the people that surround you, who's actually have your best, you know, interests in mind. You know, unfortunately for me, I had a lot of great coaches who gave me advice. You know, so it's about if you want to take that advice or not and follow it. So if you have people in your life that's, you know, supporting you and they support you well, listen to that advice, you know, and stay close to them, you know, because as you become better, you know, you start to see people, you know, come around that you haven't seen before. So keep your circles small, be consistent, and just keep working hard.
Well, Lou, I really appreciate your time. I'd love to have you back on sometime if you're open to that in the
Yes,
future.
sir. Anytime.
That'd be great.
Just let me know.
I definitely will. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And to all the listeners, all the watchers at home, thank you for joining us. I've been your host, Connor Lewis, signing off.